Hey girlies, just a quick reminder before we dive into today's episode. The information shared on this podcast is intended to be general sports nutrition advice and education related to period recovery for female athletes. This is not specific to any one individual, and it may or may not apply to your situation. If you are looking for personalized guidance, be sure to apply to our RBSN Period Recovery Nutrition Coaching Program. Our 4-month period recovery program is designed to help you sustainably get your period back and keep it. You can apply now to get started in our program, and we'll leave the link for the program below. If you're not quite ready for that one-on-one approach, that's exactly why we created the Period Recovery Guide. It's designed to support the girlies working on period recovery, specifically if you've lost it due to hypothalamic amenorrhea. The full Period Recovery Guide is finally out now, and we will leave all of the information for it in the podcast show notes. This is the Eat More Carbs Podcast. Hello and welcome back. This is the Eat More Carbs Podcast. It's Jenna here with Reilly. We are both dietitians and we talk every Thursday about sports nutrition for the girlies. Today's episode, we're talking about what to do once you get your period back. So first of all, congratulations. If you're listening to this episode, that means you probably got your period back, which is amazing. We're so excited to talk a little bit about what to do as far as next steps after you get your period back. We are going to do our high and low before we get into that. So sharing just a little bit about our week, the good and the parts we wish had gone a little bit differently. Reilly, can you kick us off?
Yeah, this is like such a dietitian high. I'm kind of embarrassed, but I have like perfected my post-run smoothie.
Oh, okay.
I am like so proud of it right now. Like I feel like I've been posting about it like all the time, but love my post-workout smoothie right now. And it has made me really happy because something that's been kind of weird for me is that I've lost a lot of my appetite since I've increased my training and my running for my marathon. It's a little interesting, but I've been relying a lot on like smoothies and different things like that to make sure I'm getting in all my nutrition.
Do you mind sharing what you're putting in your smoothie?
Yeah. So I'm using chocolate milk, chocolate protein powder, frozen bananas. I'm doing creatine, spinach, peanut butter, and then some hemp seeds as well. I feel like the thing that is like the magic ingredient is a frozen banana. Like there's something different about a frozen banana versus a regular banana or a non-frozen banana with ice. I just feel like the creaminess comes from having that like frozen banana. And I put like a couple pieces of ice in, but it's just not icy, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I totally get that.
And it's not super foamy because I think sometimes like when you use a protein powder in a smoothie, it gets like foamy and it's not that. And then I'm so extra. I got like one of those like thicker straws, like the straws that are wider, like the wide mouth straws, like you get at like the Panera smoothies, and it helps elevate the experience.
Something about like certain glasses, certain straws and things like that can actually, I swear, change the way something tastes.
Yeah. Also, it just makes it more fun. Like I'm like talking with clients about this. I'm like, your feeling is supposed to be fun. So
you're supposed to be enjoying it. If you're not, we should be rethinking it.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. So that's my high. Such a dietitian high, but I had to share. My low is fantasy football, like just in general, because I feel like I can't stop playing it, but then it can't stop stressing me out. And I have gotten to the point where all of my hobbies stress me out and I need to rethink them.
We need to find a non-stressful hobby for you.
Yeah. But I like, again, maybe I just like, I thrive on the stress. So I don't know.
Are you playing in a family league again?
Yeah. And it's so funny because we all complain about it, but like we're all obsessed with it.
That is so funny. I love that.
What about you? What's your high and your low this week?
Okay. I'm sharing a high. This actually happened a while ago now, but I can finally share this news publicly. My best friend got engaged and I am so excited for her and her fiance. I knew that this was happening for a while. Like he had reached out to me and been like, do you think she'll like this ring? And it was so hard for me to keep it a secret from her. And they got engaged back at the beginning of August, but they had waited a little bit of time to post about it on social media and share that news with like the world. I'm so excited about it and I don't feel like I have to keep this secret anymore. And I'm just so excited for her. So that's my high, even though that did happen a little while ago. But yeah, that's my high.
Oh, I love that.
My low, I guess it's kind of a low, but it's also kind of a high too. I'm just having a good week, I guess. I finally found the cherry fruit riot.
Okay. I need you to explain them to me because I live in Winston-Salem and this is a tiny town and you live in Phoenix. So you get all the good stuff first. So I'm not going to be seeing the cherry fruit riot for probably 2 years. Explain them to me. Like, okay, is it Olipop? Or is it cherry?
Okay, this is why it's my low, because I feel like the marketing of it didn't match up to like what it tasted like. Like it's supposed to taste like cola, and to me it tastes like cherry candy because it's a frozen cherry with candy coating on it. And I don't think it tastes like the Olipop cola flavor. That's just me personally. The other thing that really threw me off is that there's no sour in it, and I didn't know that. It's all sweet. So it's very sweet. So if you like a sweet thing, this might be something that you really, really like. But if you like the Fruit Riot for the sour candy part of it, this is not the same. Still a good, refreshing, sweet option if that's what you like. But if you are anticipating something sour, that is not what this is. And for some reason, I just thought it would still be like that. And it's so different from the rest of the Fruit Riot products. So that's why it's my low, because it's very, very different. Reilly's already giving me the thumbs down.
If your mouth isn't like peeling because you've ate too many Fruit Riots, like it's not part of the experience. Like it's not my Fruit Riot.
Like that feeling where it's like, yeah. Yeah, you're not going to get that.
My mouth hurts and I can't stop.
I can't stop eating it. It's so good. The mango one to me is hands down the best one still. That's that.
So good. I like the mixed berries, but like I like them when they're like the 3 different flavors. That's also the one at Costco. And you can get a giant Costco bag for $10. And that's usually what those little bags cost at the grocery store.
They do. They're like $7. It's crazy. That's how much I spent on my cherries, but I had to try them. It was in the name of the Eat More Carbs podcast. That way I could share this experience with you.
I'll Venmo you $8 because it was a business expense.
Perfect. Someone had to do it.
Thank you for taking one for the team. Now I don't have to have them. I also am not an Olipop person, so.
Ooh, okay. I like some of the flavors, but not all of them. Like I'm very picky, but I'm also not like a big carbonated beverage person. So.
Oh, I'm a psychopath. If everything I drank for the rest of my life was carbonated, I'd be okay. But I just don't like artificial sugars, like the sweetener.
That's fair.
I did too many of those when I was struggling with my disordered eating.
That's so fair.
Artificial sugars and non-fat yogurt. You will never catch me.
Okay, well, we've already gotten a pretty good start to this episode, but today we are talking about what to do once you get your period back. Highly requested episode, so I'm super excited to talk about it with you, Reilly. We get a lot of questions about this, and we also talk about it pretty frequently about getting your period back and what the next steps look like. So, Reilly, what to expect when you get your period back? What do people need to know?
A lot, I think. A lot, but like not a lot at the same time, because I think that there's all this hype, right? And there's all this advice on the internet about like how to get your period back. But then like, what are you supposed to do like once you get it back? Like, are you supposed to change things, right? I think there's just a lot of confusion about it. I think it's just really overwhelming. But my recommendation is like, please don't change anything, right? Like you've gotten your body to a good point. So let's just maybe celebrate and relax for like 1 to 2 months.
I completely agree with you. At RBSN, we like to say that we want 3 cycles before we start to make any major adjustments to fueling, goals, or training. The reason why is that like our body can still be in like a very fragile state when we're still like in that initial getting your period back. Is there anything that we should be aware of from the standpoint of like how often we should be getting our period? What does a normal period look like when you've first gotten your period back after going through an HA recovery process?
Ooh, yes, this is such a good question. And this is something that we really dive into in our period recovery community. We have a whole section on like what HA is, what a normal menstrual cycle is, and like the physiology behind all of this, as well as like a bonus section once you get your period back. We teach you how to keep it. So I do think it's important to kind of like go back to the basics when we're looking at a menstrual cycle. The normal menstrual cycle period of time is 21 to 35 days. And the internet will tell you the average menstrual cycle is 28 days long, which cracks me up because that's literally the average between 21 and 35. But when you look at the research, only 5% of menstruating females have a 28-day cycle. Most individuals have a cycle that's somewhere between 21 and 35 days.
If you have gotten your period back and then you go longer than 35 days, does that perhaps mean that we have regressed in our fueling or maybe overdone our training after getting our cycle back?
I would say yes, right? We do want you to have a cycle within 21 to 35 days. And more importantly, we want you to have a cycle that's close in duration. And what I mean by that is if your first cycle is 25 days, I guess your second cycle, right? Because you don't really technically know how long your first cycle was, but your second cycle, the time between your first and second cycle is 25 days. We want your next cycle to be close to that, right? If your first cycle is 21 days and your second cycle is 35 days, yes, they're technically air quotes normal amounts, but that is a red flag to me, as well as a period that's, 40, 45 days long. That could technically almost be 2 cycles you could have possibly missed a cycle there.
We get a lot of questions about like irregular cycles and whether or not that might be an indicator that we are in a state of lower energy availability. And I think the answer to that is definitely yes, it's possible, but making sure that like you're tracking your cycle once you get it back to see whether or not you are falling within that 21 to 35 day period is really important, and kind of establishing what might be a norm for you. That doesn't mean it's going to hit 28 days or 26 days consistently every single time, but are you around that range? Is it, consistently 25, 26, maybe 27 days versus like Reilly said, it's going from 21 to 45, then back to 30 or something like that. We would want that like range of consistency with a consistent cycle after getting it back. What is one of the biggest mistakes that you see athletes make once they've gotten their first period back?
We talked a little bit about this, but I think the concept of like once you've gotten your period back, like everything's okay. And even when we look at, REDS modeling or we look at the research, just because you have your period doesn't mean that you're not under fueling. And I do think, especially when you've gotten your first period back, you're probably kind of wavering on that balance of positive energy availability and negative energy availability. If you make too many changes too fast, or if you think that everything's okay now because you've had that bleeding phase, you are going to likely lose your period again. I'm just being real with you.
So keeping things consistent with fueling and training is important during that time, and not almost like regressing or taking a step backward towards maybe what was a previous fueling pattern in order to continue the cycle after that. A lot of times people that go through the period recovery program might experience some like body composition changes, maybe some weight restoration and things like that. Those can be really hard changes. What have you seen or what have you helped athletes work through from that standpoint if they start to experience those things and then maybe they don't feel very comfortable with those changes?
Ooh, this is so hard. And I think it's really challenging also to give like general advice on this because it is so situational. And I do want to like just preface with the advice that I'm giving by saying that because again, it's very, very individualized. And this is something that we often have to like navigate and work together on in a one-on-one capacity. I do think though, it is important to remember that this is just a season or a phase of your life. And it doesn't mean that the rest of your life is going to be like this. We have many athletes that we work with after they've gotten their period back for 4 or 5 months. We start to do body composition modifications. And I think there's a lot of guilt often with people because they feel like they can't want to change their body after period recovery. And again, period recovery is just a phase or season in your life. And it's not going to be like this for forever. And we can modify body composition again. We just can't do it in the way that you did it before because in the way that you did it before wasn't healthy for your body.
I think that brings up a good point between like the difference between the goal of body modification and low energy availability, because often we associate body composition modifications with a caloric deficit, which can often be a very gray line when we think about the difference between caloric deficit and low energy availability. What is the difference there? Is there a difference there?
Ooh, yes, there is a difference. And immediately I'm actually thinking about the episode that you did where you worked with the runner who was trying to get her period back while training for a half marathon. And to quickly kind of summarize what you shared, she was fueling properly from a energy standpoint, like at the end of the day, right? Like if you looked at her overall calorie intake or overall energy intake throughout the day, she was probably hitting or close to hitting her energy needs. But what had happened was she wasn't providing calories or energy and the type of energy and a macro composition that she needed for her training. So yes, if she typed in calories into her MyFitnessPal, at the end of the day, she was probably hitting her number, but she wasn't providing the right nutrients at the right time. And you have to do this for proper energy availability.
That goes back to a lot of the things that we talk about on this podcast so many times, like making sure that you have pre and post fueling, making sure that you have fuel consistently throughout the day. And we can exist in an energy deficit or work towards body modification goals while still making sure that when we're training, we have adequate fuel.
Yes. I feel like we've like oversimplified nutrition, but also like made it super complex at the same time. And we treat like a calorie as a calorie. And like, we just treat it as this like equation and it's just a little bit more complicated than that.
Yeah. I think part of the internet has a lot to do with that because people will be like, well, look, I modified body composition while only eating like a hamburger or something like that. And it just makes it, just like you said, we tried to make it simple. By making it simple, we made it more complicated and all of those things. And that's why making sure that like you are are working through the period recovery process in a way that supports your training is so important.
Yes. And we have talked about this a lot too, but like this is why we really focus on like sports nutrition within the period recovery program and within the period recovery community, as well as chat with you all about it here versus the all-in approach, because the all-in approach really focuses on the calorie numbers. And yes, you know what? We need you to likely increase your energy intake. And sometimes there is weight restoration that is needed. But if you're not learning how to fuel around your training and you're not applying the right sports nutrition, your period's just not going to stay around once you start training again.
A question we get a lot of times is from individuals who want to know if we still work with people who train recreationally versus train in a collegiate or a professional setting, because we do talk quite a bit about sports nutrition. So in the community, working through the period recovery program, are we working with all types of athletes? Like, who's in the community? Who are we working with?
Yeah, I would say that like we work with active girlies who have a goal, right? No matter if the goal is to run a half marathon, if it's to go to the Olympics, if it's to gain muscle mass, just because you're not training on a team or you're training for a certain competition, like it doesn't mean that you're not active and that you're not an athlete.
I think this is such a big point because we have so many people who come and they're like, well, I'm not an athlete. And then we look at their training log and they're training 2+ hours per day. It's like, girl, you're an athlete.
You ran 70 miles this week. Like you're an athlete.
Yes, exactly. We work with everybody that comes and has a goal and wants to make sure that they do it in an appropriate way to continue to stay fueled, stay healthy, and maintain a cycle or get a cycle back. Kind of going back to the idea of, well, what happens when you get your period back? A lot of the things that I hear is like a lot of discomfort around some of the changes that have been made and feeling like it is going to last for forever. So even though it's super individualized on how we work through this period with athletes, what are some methods if you are in the same boat that like you would have an athlete implement when it takes a look at like overcoming some of that like initial hardship during that period where we aren't changing much?
So after 4 to 5 months, we can, like we've talked about, look at body composition modification. I do think, though, that it's hard to do that and then also continue to train at a very high level when you are so new into this kind of like positive energy availability state.
So almost taking a look at the goals that you have, and if the goal for the upcoming season after getting your period back is running a marathon, maybe that wouldn't be the best time to also focus on body modification. So really kind of picking one goal to go after before you go on to a next one.
Yes. And some of my athletes right now are so mad at me because I said this on the podcast and they listen and they needed to hear this, and you know exactly who you are.
As high achieving athletes, we want it all. We want to go after all the goals at once.
And I do have to add something to this too, because I do think it is possible to change body composition, like we've talked about multiple times, while having a goal. It's just going to take a little bit longer, because if you're training at a high level, we have to fuel that training. So if you want to change body composition while training for a marathon, like you have to understand that it's going to take longer because you have to fuel for the work that's being done.
I couldn't have said it better myself. The other thing that I see often with athletes who get their period back is that there's a lot of fear around, or maybe anxious feelings around, increasing training after they've gotten their period back because they're nervous about losing it again.
Oof. Yeah, there's a lot of this. And I think this kind of goes back to that like misconceptions that might be like, not to call anybody out, but like I do think that like that all-in approach where like you don't train and you fuel in a surplus often gives a lot of athletes like guilt for wanting to get back into training.
I think if you're someone who's struggling with this and you've gotten your period back and then you're planning to increase your training because you have a new goal, maybe that is athletic related, the one thing that I would recommend is to look at what you were doing when you didn't have your period and look at your fueling now, and remember that we have made a lot of progress with increasing your fueling, and we can continue to make progress on other goals, and it's going to be okay.
It's going to be okay if you also increase your fueling because you've increased your training. And I do think, like Jenna just said, looking at what you were doing before, making sure that we're never doing that again. Like, right? Like, don't go back to that, please.
Yes. You bring up such a good point with that, in that if we're changing training, we need to change the fueling to support the new training that we're doing.
It's like if you were driving your car. Like, if you drove your car more, you'd have to put more gas in it.
The car analogy wins every time. It's silly, but it works.
It works. It works.
What else do you want people to know about what to expect when they get their period back after going through HA recovery?
If I had to, provide like 3 tips for what you should focus on after you've gotten your period back, I think the first thing is you need to track your symptoms. Like you need to track your symptoms and you need to also track your days. I usually, and I don't know if you see this too, but at least with my athletes, usually symptoms are worse like the first time. Right before the first cycle, I feel like hormones, moods, and symptoms, cramps, things like that are always like worse in the beginning, but it's still really, really important to track. So I would do that. I would also set goals and challenge yourself not to make any modifications. I know that subconsciously you probably want to so freaking bad, maybe it's not even subconscious, but you want to make modifications. You're not out of the water yet. You still need to keep fueling. I guess the third thing is to like celebrate, right? Like you got your period back and now you're going to keep your period and it's probably going to go for an extended period of time. It's really, really exciting.
Congratulations if you're listening to this episode because you got your period back. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Eat More Carbs podcast. If you do have questions for Reilly and I, you can always find us online or you can leave them in the comments of this podcast. You can find Reilly on Instagram at easy.sports.nutrition and you can find me at jenna.fisher.nutrition. Thanks again for listening to this episode. Please make sure you rate, subscribe, and review. And as always, remember to eat more carbs.